The gavel struck once, sharp as thunder, echoing through the packed courtroom. I could feel every pair of eyes drilling into me, waiting to see if I'd crumble. Across the aisle, my cousin leaned back in his chair, smugness carved into his face like stone. He whispered something to my aunt, and they both smirked, as if victory was already theirs. On the table in front of them lay the deed to my grandfather's house, the home I grew up in, the only place that ever felt like safety. They thought it was theirs now. They thought they had erased me. The judge's eyes flicked to me. Silence tightened around the room like a noose. My hands rested on the folder in my lap, filled with the proof no one expected. Proof my grandfather had trusted me with his final secret. Narrator, Vio, they thought this would break me. But they had no idea what was coming. The folder was heavy. Not with paper, but with the power to turn everything upside down. And when I opened it, the war truly began. Before the courtroom, before the smirks and the lies, there was the house. Grandpa's house sat on the edge of town, its brick walls weathered but strong, ivy curling up the sides like green veins. The porch creaked when you stepped on it, and the old oak tree in the yard bent just enough to look like it was bowing. For me, it wasn't just a house. It was the heart of every memory worth keeping. I spent summers there chasing fireflies while Grandpa carved wood in his workshop, the scent of cedar and pine heavy in the air. Winters were spent huddled by the fireplace, where the flames painted gold across his tired face. He would rest his calloused hand on my shoulder and say, "One day, you'll understand why I kept this place standing." Back then, I didn't know what he meant, but I would. My family didn't see the house the way I did. To them, it was just another asset, a prize to be split, sold, or bragged about at church potlucks. They loved talking about inheritance like it was a trophy waiting for them. My uncle even joked once that Grandpa's house was his early retirement plan. Everyone laughed, except Grandpa. His eyes darkened, and he changed the subject. I should have paid more attention. After Grandpa passed, I kept my distance from the vultures circling his estate. I was the quiet one, the dependable one. I wasn't loud at family dinners, I wasn't greedy, and I certainly wasn't first in line with my hands out. But somehow, that only made me invisible. My cousins were different. Flashy, entitled, always jockeying for attention. They were the kind of people who posted selfies with Grandpa in his last days, just to collect sympathy likes online. At the funeral, I noticed one of them snapping photos of his casket, smiling, as if even death was a backdrop for their performance. But I stayed quiet. I thought silence was strength. Weeks later, the reading of the will felt more like a performance. My relatives filled the lawyer's office, their perfume too sweet, their voices sharp with anticipation. They leaned forward like gamblers waiting for the dice to land. When the lawyer's voice steadied on my name, a few heads turned. Grandpa had left me the house. For a brief second, the air shifted. My heart pounded, a lump rising in my throat. The house, the place I loved most, was mine. But then the whisper started. Snide comments. Disbelief. It must be a mistake. Why would he get the house? I felt their eyes cut into me, knives dipped in envy. I tried to ignore it, tried to hold onto the warmth of Grandpa's trust. But I should have known better. Because for people like them, trust is just another thing to exploit. The first sting came quietly. My cousin Mark pulled me aside in the parking lot. He smiled, that kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. Hey, listen, Grandpa didn't really mean for you to keep it, right? I mean, it's too much for you. Why don't you just sell it? Split the money. Be fair. Fair. That word stung worse than the cold wind. Fair meant bending to them. Fair meant losing the one thing Grandpa gave me. I shook my head. It's not for sale. His smile tightened into something darker. We'll see about that. I didn't realize then that those 4 words were a warning. Because for them, the house wasn't just brick and mortar. It was power, a symbol of who Grandpa trusted and who he didn't. And they weren't about to let me carry it. Narrator, Vio, I thought silence would keep the peace. But silence only fed their hunger. And soon, they weren't asking anymore. They were taking. The pushback came harder than I ever imagined. One morning, I woke to the sound of fists pounding on the front door. When I opened it, 2 men in dark jackets stood on the porch, county officers. Behind them, my aunt and cousin lingered with folded arms and smug faces. The officer cleared his throat. "We've received a complaint. Apparently, you're trespassing on this property. It belongs to your family estate." For a moment, the world tilted. My pulse thundered in my ears. "Trespassing?" I stammered. "This is my house." My grandfather left it to me, but when I turned, my cousin Mark stepped forward, waving a document like a magician producing a trick card. "Not anymore," he said, his grin wide. "The deed's been reassigned." I could see the satisfaction dripping off them, like cats cornering a mouse. My aunt even pretended to wipe a fake tear. "We just want what's best for him." Poor thing's confused. Grandpa never intended this burden on him. The officers looked at me, waiting. Doubt flickered in their eyes. I wanted to scream, to tear the forged paper from his hand and set it on fire. But instead, I forced myself to breathe. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind. "One day, you'll understand why I kept this place standing." That day, I finally understood, because weeks before his passing, Grandpa had called me into his workshop. He pressed an envelope into my hand, the edges worn, his handwriting shaky but clear. "Keep this safe," he whispered. "They'll come for it. But this is the truth." Inside was the real deed, notarized and sealed, with my name printed boldly. Tucked beside it was a letter from his lawyer, instructions written with precision. "If anyone disputes this inheritance, present this document. Trust the plan I put in motion." That envelope had stayed hidden in a locked drawer in my bedroom, untouched until now. As the officers shifted uncomfortably, my cousin smirked wider. "See? He's got nothing. Just a squatter playing house." Something in me snapped. Not the kind of snap that breaks, but the kind that sharpens. "Wait here," I said, my voice steady. I disappeared inside, footsteps quick against the old wooden floorboards. My hands trembled as I opened the drawer, pulling out the envelope that suddenly felt heavier than any weapon. When I returned, I laid the real deed in the officers' hands. Their brows furrowed as they scanned it. Seals. Signatures. The weight of legal truth. Mark's smirk faltered. My aunt's face drained of color. The officer straightened, folding the forged paper back toward Mark. "This," he said, his tone firm, "is not valid. And if you continue presenting fraudulent documents, you could face charges." For the first time, silence pressed on them. I caught Mark's glare, venomous, a promise of retaliation. My aunt muttered something under her breath, tugging him away by the arm. But I saw the fear flicker in their eyes. As the officers left, I closed the door behind me, the click of the lock echoing like a victory drum. My chest heaved, adrenaline coursing through me, but underneath it was something new, resolve. They weren't invincible. They weren't untouchable. Narrator, Vio, they thought they still had control. They didn't. But if I had hoped they would stop, I was wrong. The setback only fueled their desperation. Within days, the rumors thickened, the lies grew louder, and new threats emerged from every direction. I wasn't just fighting for a house anymore. I was fighting for my name, my dignity, my place in a family determined to erase me. And the war was only just beginning. It didn't take long for the pressure to begin. First, it was the phone calls. My aunt's voice, sticky sweet on the surface, sharp underneath. "Sweetheart, that house is too much for you to handle. You work all the time. Why don't you let us take care of it? Grandpa would want the family to benefit, not just one person." Then came the texts from my cousins. Photos of "for sale" signs circled in red, sent with winking emojis. Subtle at first, then not so subtle. One read, "This is what's coming whether you like it or not." I tried ignoring them. I buried myself in work, in late nights staring at spreadsheets, convincing myself that if I kept my head down, the storm would pass. But storms don't pass when your own blood is chasing the lightning. Soon, the whispers spread through town. At the grocery store, neighbors gave me pitying smiles, some even patting my arm like I was the confused child clinging to something beyond me. "I heard you're struggling to keep up with the house," one said. Another muttered, "Such a shame. He should have sold while he could. I hadn't said a word to anyone. The lies were coming from inside my family. By spring, they escalated. My cousin Mark showed up at the house unannounced, leaning against his shiny car in the driveway like he already owned the place. "You're wasting this," he sneered, gesturing at the porch, the garden, the oak tree. "You don't deserve it. You don't even use it right. We're putting in an offer next week, whether you sign or not." My chest tightened. "You can't sell what isn't yours." He smirked, tapping his phone. "Funny thing about paperwork, it's easy to make it say what you want." For the first time, I felt fear coil deep in my stomach. I started losing sleep. Nights stretched long and restless, the ceiling above me like a blank, accusing canvas. My heart raced at shadows, at the creak of floorboards, at the rustle of the oak tree outside. Every noise felt like an intrusion, like proof they were closer to stealing what was mine. My body showed it, dark circles beneath my eyes, a constant ache in my shoulders, hands that trembled when I reached for my morning coffee. Even my coworkers noticed. "You all right?" one asked gently. I lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." Inside, I was breaking. The worst part wasn't the lies or even the threats. It was the isolation. At family gatherings, they made sure I felt the distance. Conversations shifted when I walked into the room. My chair at the table was pushed to the edge, like I didn't belong. They laughed together, whispered together, locked arms for family photos without me. And when I tried to speak up, my voice was drowned in their chorus of denial. "He's paranoid. He's greedy. He's ungrateful." One night, after a particularly brutal encounter, Mark mocking me in front of relatives, calling me the squatter of Grandpa's house, I sat alone in the dark kitchen. My hands curled into fists against the table. I was close to giving up, close to believing their version of me. But then, the smallest spark. I heard a knock at the door. For a moment, I hesitated, bracing for another confrontation. But when I opened it, I found Mrs. Whitaker, our elderly neighbor from across the street. She held a basket of bread, warm, the smell of rosemary and butter filling the cold air. She pressed it into my hands. "Don't let them wear you down," she said softly. Her eyes, lined with years of living, held something fierce. "Your grandfather trusted you for a reason. I saw how much you meant to him. You're not alone in this." I froze, the bread heavy in my arms. My throat tightened, words caught somewhere between gratitude and disbelief. I thought exposing the real deed would end it, but if anything, it only made them more dangerous. Within a week, the phone calls turned into venom. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly rang me up, their voices sharp with accusation. "How could you betray the family like this? You think Grandpa meant to cut all of us out? You're selfish. We raised you better." The words hit like darts, each one dipped in poison. My cousins had spun their story well, that I had manipulated Grandpa in his final days, tricking him into leaving me the house. The rumors bled into the neighborhood too. At church, I caught whispers behind me, saw heads turning as I walked past. A woman I'd known since childhood avoided my gaze altogether. My family had painted me as the villain, and the town was buying it. It wore on me. Nights grew longer, my body heavy with the weight of constant judgment. Every creak of the old house sounded like intrusion. Every knock at the door made my chest tighten. My reflection in the mirror looked older, worn down by battles I never asked for. But the house reminded me why I couldn't give in. The oak tree swayed, branches scratching the window like Grandpa's voice urging me on. The porch smelled of pine when the rain hit, and I could almost see him sitting in his rocker, calm and certain. "Stand tall. That's what this place is for." And then I stopped being passive. I bought a binder, thick and heavy, and filled it with everything: the notarized deed, Grandpa's letter, property tax receipts, even old photos of me and him working on the house together. Every page became a piece of armor. But it wasn't just paperwork. It was my story, proof that I wasn't some greedy manipulator, but the one person Grandpa had trusted to keep this place alive. Meanwhile, the smear campaign grew louder. Mark bragged at his job that he was working on kicking the squatter out. My aunt spread lies to neighbors about me stealing from Grandpa's accounts. They even got a few extended relatives to sign a bogus petition demanding the house be sold and the profits shared. I could feel the cracks forming in their empire, though. Neighbors began noticing details that didn't add up. How could I be the thief if I was the one quietly paying the property taxes? Why were my cousins bragging about a payout they hadn't earned? Even Mrs. Whitaker, the neighbor with the bread, stood by me. She whispered one evening as we watched the sun dip behind the oak tree, their unraveling. "Just keep standing." Her words grounded me. The binder grew thicker. I tabbed sections by color, highlighted key signatures, even tucked Grandpa's original letter at the front like a shield. At night, when the house creaked and the whispers in my head tried to break me, I'd flip through those pages. Proof, strength, truth. And the more I organized, the steadier I felt. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was preparing. My cousins didn't see it. They mistook my quiet for weakness. They thought the rumors were breaking me. But in reality, every lie they told only gave me more fuel. Every false accusation only made the truth sharper, stronger. Narrator, VO, the day of reckoning was coming and no one could stop it. And when it came, I promised myself it wouldn't just clear my name. It would end their reign of lies forever. The courthouse smelled of varnished wood and stale coffee, the kind of place where truth was supposed to rise above lies. But as I walked into that courtroom, clutching the binder against my chest, I felt every eye turn toward me like I was already guilty. Mark sat at the front with my aunt, their lawyer sharp-suited and smug. My cousin leaned back, smirking like he'd already won. He tapped his pen against the table, slow and mocking, as if to say, "You're finished." The judge entered, her gavel striking once. The sound sliced through the silence. Their lawyer spoke first, his words smooth as oil. He painted me as a manipulative opportunist, claiming I'd taken advantage of a vulnerable old man. My aunt even dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, her voice trembling as she said, "We just want what's fair for the family." The courtroom murmured. I could feel the judgment pressing on me, the whispers carrying like a wave. Maybe he really did. Maybe Grandpa wasn't in his right mind. My stomach knotted, but I forced myself to breathe. This was it. The moment Grandpa had prepared me for. When it was my turn, I rose slowly, the binder heavy in my hands. My voice wavered for a moment, but then steadied, calm, measured, unshakable. "Your Honor," I began, my grandfather wasn't confused. He was deliberate. He left this house to me because he knew I would protect it. And he knew what the rest of the family would do if he didn't. I opened the binder. The sound of the rings clicking echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. Page by page, I laid out the evidence. The notarized deed with the raised seal, the property tax receipts paid in my name, photographs of Grandpa and me repairing the porch together, his handwriting scrawled on the margins of an old blueprint. For him. Always for him. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. And then I pulled out the final piece, Grandpa's letter. The paper was worn, but his words were clear, his signature steady. I read it aloud, my voice strong now. This house is for my grandson. He is the only one I trust to keep its heart beating. Do not let anyone take it from him. Silence fell. The judge's gaze sharpened, shifting from me to my cousin. Mark's smirk cracked. His hands trembled as he tried to flip through his own papers that suddenly looked flimsy, worthless. My aunt's face went pale, her tissue limp in her fingers. The judge leaned forward. It appears the will and the deed are clear. Any attempt to present forged documents is not only invalid, but potentially criminal. Do you understand the severity of that? Their lawyer stuttered, searching for words. Mark's jaw clenched, fury burning in his eyes, but no words came. And for the first time, I looked at them without fear. My voice was steady as I said, "I don't want apologies. I want change." The gavel struck again. It was over. But the real power wasn't in the ruling. It was in the silence that followed, the heavy, undeniable silence where everyone in that room saw the truth laid bare. My cousins weren't just defeated. They were exposed. Their empire of lies had collapsed, and all that remained was the weight of their shame. And I was free. The days after the courtroom felt unreal, like the air itself was lighter. For the first time in months, I woke without dread pressing on my chest. The house was still mine, not because I clung to it, but because the truth had spoken louder than their lies. Word traveled fast. The same relatives who had once called to condemn me now went silent. The whispers in town shifted too. Neighbors who had avoided me offered small nods of respect. Mrs. Whitaker even left a pie on the porch, a quiet acknowledgement that the storm had passed. But for my aunt and cousin, the fallout was brutal. Their forged documents became public record, and with that came consequences. Mark lost his job after his employer discovered he'd used company resources to research fake legal claims. My aunt's reputation in the church shattered, her endless gossip finally catching up to her. They avoided me after that, ducking their heads when we crossed paths. The smugness that had once clung to them like perfume was gone, replaced by something hollow. And I didn't chase them. I didn't need to. Their downfall was its own punishment. Inside the house, I began to rebuild, not just the broken steps on the porch or the sagging gutter, but myself. One evening, I pulled out the binder, flipping past the documents that had saved me. I stopped at the letter. Grandpa's handwriting swirled across the page, steady and sure, and I traced it with my finger. Tears pricked my eyes, not of grief this time, but of gratitude. He had believed in me when no one else did. He had known I'd find the strength when I needed it most. I framed the deed, not as a trophy, but as a promise. It now hung on the wall above the mantel, a quiet reminder that the house wasn't just property, it was legacy. The oak tree out front swayed in the autumn wind, golden leaves scattering like confetti. I sat beneath it, remembering all the afternoons Grandpa and I had worked side by side. My hands brushed the rough bark, grounding me. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone. I wasn't defined by their betrayal anymore. I wasn't the family scapegoat, the walking ATM, the outcast. I was someone who had stood, fought, and survived. Narrator, VO, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Because it wasn't just about holding onto the house, it was about reclaiming myself. In the weeks that followed, I started new routines. I opened the doors to friends, neighbors, even children who wanted to play in the yard. Laughter filled the halls again, erasing the echoes of courtroom tension. I even began a journal, writing not about the pain, but about resilience, about how betrayal can break you or build you if you let it. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in streaks of fire, I whispered to the oak tree, "We did it, Grandpa." And in the rustle of the leaves, I swear I heard his reply. Have you ever faced betrayal from the very people who were supposed to protect you? Have you ever been treated like your worth was nothing more than what you could give or what could be taken from you? If you have, then you know the kind of strength it takes to rise above it. To stand your ground when the world calls you selfish. To prove that the truth is louder than lies. I want to hear your stories. Share them in the comments because you never know who needs to read them today. Remember this. Worth isn't something they give you, it's something you claim for yourself. And when you finally do, no one can take it away.